We're getting straight into it because there is a lot happening around the Detroit Lions right now. And if you're following everything closely, you can feel that this offseason is starting to heat up in a serious way. Between the NFL Combine, trade rumors, coaching developments, and injury updates, there's no time to waste. Let's begin with the situation involving Kelvin Shepard. He revealed that he was in communication with the Miami Dolphins for about 2 weeks regarding their head coaching vacancy. According to him, after his interview, he was contacted by 3 people from the front office, and from the way he described it, it felt very real. It didn't sound like just a token interview. He truly believes he was close to landing that job. Now think about what that would have meant for Detroit. If Shepard had gotten that head coaching position, the Lions would have received compensatory draft picks. That's not small, that's valuable capital. At the same time, it would have opened the door for a new defensive coordinator. But here's the honest question. Was it too soon? He's only been a defensive coordinator for 1 year. There's upside there, but from a defensive performance standpoint, there's still something to prove. The Lions' defense had its struggles, and if we're being real, fans expected more consistency, so the big question is, do you believe Shepard was truly that close to becoming a head coach? Now shifting gears to something official and exciting, the Lions are heading to Germany in 2026. This international game makes a lot of sense, especially because of Amon-Ra St. Brown. He speaks fluent German, his mother is German, and from a marketing and fan engagement standpoint, it's almost perfect for the NFL if you're trying to grow the fan base internationally. Having a star wide receiver who can connect directly with the local media and fans in their native language is powerful. The downside, it's a home game. That means one less game at Ford Field. Because of the NFC home game rotation, the Lions will still have 8 home games plus the international one, but you'd rather give up an away game than a home game. Still, expect a strong Lions presence in Germany. Expect St. Brown to be everywhere that week. Press conferences, interviews, promotional events. This could legitimately grow the Lions brand overseas. Now let's talk about the offensive line, specifically the center position. There's internal belief that Ratledge could potentially move to center. That's interesting, but it doesn't necessarily mean it will happen. The Lions are clearly evaluating options, and one name that surfaced is Cade Mays, a young center who was drafted in the 6th round in 2022 by Carolina. Here's the concern. Is he truly a significant upgrade? He's 26 years old, but there were reports of him being moved to right guard late in the season due to struggles at center. If you're trying to stabilize one of the most important positions on the offensive line, is this the answer? Or are you just rotating the same level of play? If the Lions pursue Mays, they better have a backup plan. Whether that's drafting a center or having positional flexibility ready, the center position is arguably one of the biggest priorities this offseason. Defensively, injury updates on Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch are critical. The updates suggest that evaluations are ongoing and that in about a month there should be more clarity. That timing is important because it lines up closely with the NFL draft. If either prognosis isn't encouraging, safety immediately becomes a pressing draft need, not a luxury, not depth, a need. This adds to an already growing list of needs. Offensive tackle depth is needed, with Taylor Decker likely in his final stretch in Detroit. Edge rusher is a major focus, especially with reports that the Lions are heavily interviewing edge prospects at the Combine. That's not random, that's targeted. Expect an edge defender in round 2 or possibly late round 1 if there's a trade-up. That's not speculation out of nowhere, that's pattern recognition based on visits and needs. Now, let's address the rumor involving David Montgomery and the Denver Broncos. The chatter is that the Lions could move Montgomery for a 5th-round pick. A 3rd-rounder would be ideal, but realistically, a 5th feels more in line with market value given age and contract structure. If that happens, the Lions would likely draft a running back in the mid-rounds. There are prospects that fit the physical style Detroit likes. It wouldn't be a panic move, it would be strategic cap and asset management. Another possible departure? Alex Anzalone. There's discussion that if Tremaine Edmunds becomes available via trade, the Chicago Bears could shift their linebacker room, potentially making Anzalone a fit there. If that happens, so be it. His play showed signs of regression, and this roster is entering a phase where upgrades matter more than loyalty. On the coaching side, the addition of Mike Kafka as passing game coordinator is a move that should excite fans. Pairing Kafka with Dan Campbell and Jared Goff signals a strong commitment to offensive continuity and growth. Elevating offensive structure while surrounding your quarterback with experienced minds is how you sustain success. And we're just a short time away from free agency, the dominoes are about to start falling. Center edge, safety, offensive tackle depth, running back contingency, linebacker decisions. coaching structure, international exposure. It's all happening at once. So now I want to ask you, if you had to prioritize just one move before free agency officially begins, what is the one position or decision you believe the Detroit Lions must get right no matter what? If you really break this down, the next few weeks are going to tell us exactly how aggressive this front office plans to be, because everything we just talked about connects. Nothing is isolated. The center position affects the run game. The run game affects whether trading David Montgomery even makes sense. The safety injuries affect how aggressive you are at edge, and the edge position affects how much pressure you're putting on that secondary to hold up. Let's go back to the defensive side for a second. The Lions interviewing multiple edge prospects at the Combine is not random behavior. When a team consistently meets with players at one position group, that's intention, that's preparation, that's planning for a move. Detroit knows they need more juice off the edge. They can't rely on just one or two guys to generate pressure all season. Injuries happen. Rotations matter. And in today's NFL, if you can't collapse the pocket, you expose your safeties and corners. Now connect that to the updates on Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch. The timeline mentioned about a month, maybe a month and a half before clarity that puts decision-making right in line with draft strategy. If the medical evaluations trend positively, maybe safety becomes depth instead of urgency. But if there's any setback, this front office is not going to gamble. They will draft insurance. That's how smart teams operate. And that brings us back to roster balance. Because if you draft an edge early and potentially a safety in the first 3 rounds, that limits how much you can invest at center unless you solve it in free agency. That's why the Cade Mays interest is intriguing. It might not be flashy, it might not excite fans, but sometimes the goal isn't excitement, it's stabilization. The real question is whether the staff believes he can develop upward or whether he's simply a depth contingency. If Detroit does bring in someone like Mays and still drafts a center, that would signal competition. And competition is something this regime has leaned into since day one. Nobody gets handed a job. That's part of the culture. Now, let's revisit the David Montgomery rumor, because this one could shift everything. If the Lions move him to the Denver Broncos for a 5th-round pick, they free up some financial flexibility and potentially gain a mid-round selection. But it also means you're trusting the draft board to deliver a back who can complement the current offense. That's not impossible. The draft is deep at running back most years, but it changes the dynamic of the offense. Montgomery brings physicality, reliability, and pass protection value. Replacing production is one thing. Replacing trust from the coaching staff is another. If that trade happens, it won't just be about the pick. It'll be about confidence in internal evaluation of upcoming draft talent. As for Alex Anzalone potentially landing with the Chicago Bears, that feels like a situation where both sides might be ready for a reset. His leadership has mattered, but the performance dip and constant contract chatter have made this feel like a natural separation point. If Chicago reshuffles their linebacker group and sees him as a veteran presence, that's business. Detroit has to think forward, and then you factor in the offensive staff structure. Mike Kafka stepping into the passing game coordinator role could quietly be one of the most impactful moves of the offseason. Continuity around Jared Goff matters. Structure matters. Layering creative passing concepts while maintaining the physical identity of the offense, that's the balance this team is chasing. If Kafka thrives in this role, you're not just developing players. You're building succession plans within the coaching staff too. Now zoom out for a second. You've got a potential edge draft investment, uncertainty at safety due to injuries, active evaluation at center, a possible running back trade, linebacker turnover rumors, an international game in Germany expanding the brand, and a coaching staff evolving offensively. That's not a quiet offseason. That's controlled recalibration. This is the phase where contenders separate from pretenders. The Lions are no longer rebuilding, they're refining. And refining requires tough decisions, letting veterans walk, trusting young players, making calculated trade calls, investing in premium positions. The next domino to fall will likely tell us everything about their direction. If they aggressively sign a center early in free agency, that tells you the draft is defense-heavy. If they stand pat at center but sign an edge, that shifts the board. If Montgomery gets moved before the draft, that confirms confidence in the running back class. So here's the real question as we move into the heart of free agency and the draft cycle. Are you comfortable with this front office making bold moves to stay ahead, even if it means parting ways with familiar names, or would you rather see them prioritize continuity and run it back with minimal changes? Because this is where the mindset of the franchise truly gets tested. It's easy to build hype when you're climbing. It's much harder to make disciplined decisions when you're already near the top and everyone expects you to stay there. That's the position the Lions are walking into right now. If they decide to be aggressive, you could see multiple ripple effects almost immediately. Imagine they lock in a veteran center early in free agency that instantly stabilizes the offensive line and removes pressure from the draft board. Now Brad Holmes can sit back and let the board fall to him instead of forcing a pick. That's how you maximize value. But if they wait and the center market dries up, then suddenly you're drafting for need, and drafting for need can get expensive. The same logic applies to edge. If the Lions feel confident that a difference maker is within reach late in round 1 and they move up to get him, that tells you they see this roster as one elite piece away defensively. Trading up is not something you do casually. You only do that when you believe the window is open right now. Now think about the safety situation again. If the medical updates on Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch are positive, you might see Detroit take a developmental safety instead of an immediate starter. But if there's uncertainty, that position jumps up the priority list quickly. And remember, safety is one of those spots where communication and chemistry matter just as much as raw talent. You don't just plug in anyone and expect the back end to function smoothly. Then there's the offensive identity. If David Montgomery stays, the Lions maintain that physical two-back approach that has defined them. If he goes, the offense could subtly shift, maybe more speed in the backfield, maybe more versatility in the passing game. That would signal evolution rather than continuity. Neither approach is wrong. It just depends on how the staff envisions the next step. And don't overlook the coaching layer in all of this. Elevating Mike Kafka into the passing game coordinator role suggests they want sharper structure and potentially more creativity through the air. That's not random, that's intentional growth. When you add that to Dan Campbell's leadership style and Jared Goff's command of the offense, you start to see a unit that believes it hasn't peaked yet. The Germany game in 2026 is more than a marketing move, but symbolic. The Lions are no longer just a regional team, they're being positioned as an international brand. Having Amon-Ra St. Brown represent the franchise overseas strengthens that identity. It shows confidence. The league doesn't send just anyone to international showcases, they send teams they believe people will watch. So now it becomes about alignment, front office, coaching staff, medical evaluations, draft board, cap management. All of it has to move in sync. One miscalculation at center could affect the run game. One missed edge rusher could expose the secondary. One rushed trade decision could thin out depth at the wrong time. But here's what stands out most. There's no panic, there's evaluation, there's flexibility, there's awareness of needs, and that's what contenders look like in February and March. They're not scrambling, they're calculating. Over the next stretch, watch for timing. If moves happen early, that means conviction. If Detroit waits and lets markets develop, that means patience. Both approaches can work. The difference will be how confident they are in their internal grades versus what's available externally. And as we move deeper into this offseason cycle, every rumor, every medical update, every combine interview matters a little more, because this is the stage where championship foundations are either strengthened or quietly weakened. So now I'll leave you with this as we head into the next phase. If the Lions make one bold move that surprises everyone, whether it's trading up in the draft, moving on from a veteran like Montgomery, or aggressively signing a free agent center, what type of move would you actually want it to be, and why? And the reason this conversation doesn't slow down is because the Lions aren't operating like a team hoping to compete anymore. They're operating like